Welcome to our first Udall application workshop. My name is Colleen Doherty, and I'm a program coordinator with the Center for Research and Fellowships. For today's workshop, we'll be covering selecting and supporting your recommenders, as well as developing your trajectory. So to start off, why are recommenders important? So recommenders are the folks that are really going to be corroborating all of your application materials, including really like the narrative that you're crafting as part of your application. And they're the folks that are going to be speaking to your credentials and your accomplishments. You know, all of those things are sort of very black and white on paper. You know, one line on your transcript or on your resume. They are going to be the folks that are really kind of helping you to bring that work, those experiences to life, and to help the review committees really understand the work that you have done, how that work has impacted and influenced you over the course of your career and your work with your recommenders. And again, really helping to establish and maintain the narrative that you are also creating as part of your application process. There are also folks that are going to help you really relate all of that work, all of your academic credentials, all of your leadership experiences, all of your volunteer experiences, all of those accomplishments that you've had to the goals and the criteria of the fellowship. And so they, again, are just going to be helping to really put all of that work that you've done within the frameworks of the fellowship, and so that the selection committees will be able to have a better understanding of like why you are a good fit for this fellowship. Because of all of these things, you really want to make sure that you're choosing those individuals wisely. You're making sure that these are people that know you really well, that can speak to the goals, again, the goals and the criteria of the fellowship, the mission of the fellowship, and the funding organizations. Really doing a deep dive yourself before reaching out to your recommenders and looking to see what are the goals, the mission, the vision, the history of the foundation that is funding this fellowship, and helping to craft your entire application, but also sharing that with your recommenders so that they know what points that they should be speaking to. So who should you ask, right? Again, the folks that you should be asking are folks that know you really well. They should be individuals who can really provide enthusiastic detail about you, can really provide good insight and relevant insight. So someone that you only met a few weeks ago or earlier this semester may not know you as well as someone who is who has known you for a few years. For those of you who are joining us, welcome, come on in. And for those of you watching the recording, thank you for joining us as well. And if you have any questions, you can always email us at fellowships@georgetown.edu. And so for those of you who are just joining us, we just got started, so you're good to join us and listen in. So we're just talking about recommenders, and so, who should you be asking for recommendations for? Again, you should be asking people that know you really, really well, people that can provide good detail about the experiences that are relevant to your application, can provide good insight into you and your experiences with them, can really highlight all of your accomplishments, or as many of your accomplishments as is relevant, again, to the application. Some people that you should be considering are, recent connections in the last, few months. Someone who, when we say recent connections, we mean someone that you've met and have been working with over the course of like maybe the last few months. So someone, maybe example for a faculty member, that you have gotten to know recently, and someone that can, again, speak to your academic abilities, someone that you met yesterday, probably not a good, when it don't mean as recent as yesterday. Recent being a little bit subjective, but someone who knows you well enough, and memory or knowledge of your experiences together is fresh enough that they can, again, provide that really good and enthusiastic detail. People who are in positions of authority are also really good for you to ask, asking again, using faculty members as an example, someone who is a full-time faculty member or is a professor on campus rather than a TA. Professors are going to look a lot better when it comes to your recommendations versus a TA who is most often an upper level undergrad student or a graduate student, someone who's still working on their education versus someone who has finished their education and has been teaching that topic or material for a number of years. The professor looks a lot better for those recommendations. You don't want to ask peers or family members or family friends because those are individuals who are going to be very subjective in their recommendation of you, which, yes, recommendations are always subjective, but when it comes to individuals who you've been working very closely with on a particular topic or subject area, they are going to not only be able to, yes, be subjective in praising the work that you've done, but are doing so in a way that is relevant to your experiences together. A family friend who has heard about all of the work that you have done as part of a volunteer organization can recommend you to another friend or highlight your accomplishments to family members at a family gathering or something like that. That's fine, but when you're applying for a fellowship and asking for a letter of recommendation, you want someone who is going to hold some authority in that realm, which will give a lot more weight to their recommendation. So getting to the yes. So when we talk about getting to the yes, it's like, actually asking the recommenders and getting them to say yes to providing you a letter of recommendation. So things to think about when reaching out to potential recommenders. You want to make sure that you're providing a description of the fellowship that you are applying for, as well as the website address for that fellowship. So that way they can do a little bit of their own research into the fellowship, but you also want to make sure that you're providing enough detail in your initial ask, so that way they know what it is you're asking of them. You always want to include the submission deadline, so that way it is upfront. They know whether or not they have the time and ability to write you a good letter of recommendation in the time frame allowed. You always want to ask at least 3 weeks in advance, if not more when possible, just to make sure that you're giving them enough time to write, again, a good letter of recommendation. Any selection criteria for the fellowship, whether that is for the internal application for those fellowships like the Udall that require an internal or that we have specific requirements for our internal application, as well as always the criteria and requirements from the actual fellowship organization. Your resume and CV, so that will help them to see other accomplishments that you've had or experiences that you've had that are, again, relevant to the work maybe that the two of you have done together, as well as maybe to help refresh their memory a little bit if it's someone that you have not worked with as closely recently, but you have in the past. So say a faculty member from, that you worked with last year, you've taken classes with them, you know them pretty well, you've gone to office hours before, they know you well enough that they feel comfortable writing this, but they might need to jog their memory a little bit, and so providing your resume or CV is going to help them with that. You also need to include any relevant information about other recommendation writers, so letting them know who else is writing a recommendation letter for you, explaining how that recommender is relevant to you and what that recommender will be addressing. So that way, the recommender that you're asking in this particular letter, the 2 or 3 or however many you need, are not overlapping, but hopefully will be complementary to each other. And so that way the recommenders are providing good insight into who you are, and again, a well-rounded collective highlight of you. Again, providing any descriptions of relevant activities, research, projects that you've done, whether with this particular individual or that is relevant to the work that they are going to be talking about, and the draft of any application essays, or at least outline or summary if you haven't had a chance to write a draft yet. So all of these materials will help your recommender, one, write a good recommendation letter of you. Providing them all of this information will help them to make connections that they may not have made otherwise, that maybe they didn't even know about you, and so it helps to highlight other aspects of you and your accomplishments. And again, all will go to helping them to write a good recommendation letter. Additionally, you want to make sure that you're including really clear instructions for your recommender, how they should be addressing this letter, what is the format. So some fellowships will have a very specific format. They may require letterhead, they may require an electronic signature, how they should be submitting the letter or reference. So is there a form that they need to fill out? Is there, should they be emailing the letter to the foundation directly? Should they be emailing it to us? It's going to depend on the fellowship. Contact information for yourself and the fellowship application administrator. So in that case, it's going to be our office. So always providing your own contact information, especially any additional contact information. Yes, they will have the email that you are emailing them from, but maybe your phone number in case you are, especially this time of year, you know, with this particular application, our internal deadline is January 24th. They may not be checking their email as frequently, or their Georgetown email as frequently, so they may want you to be emailing their, you know, a different email address. You may not be checking your Georgetown email as frequently, so include a secondary email address if you have it, or a phone number in case they need to reach you over the holidays. Or, you know, just wonky things happen, right? Things get sent to spam, things, you know, or, you know, accidentally get trashed and you didn't realize it. So always providing additional contact information for yourself, as well as for us, is going to be important. So where does your issue come from? So thinking about switching gears a little bit to the sort of essay of the issues that you're going to be addressing. When it comes to finding the issues that you're going to address in a fellowship application, we want to really consider the roots of your interest in the particular fellowship. And for this one, it's, you know, environmentalism, public policy regarding Indigenous populations here in the US, especially around healthcare. And so what experiences do you have that are relevant to those issues? What perspectives and expertise have you gained from those experiences? And how can you tease some of those things apart to find a really particular issue that you want to be addressing as part of your application? So this should be something that you've already explored as part of your academic experiences or extracurriculars, or you know, external co-curricular experiences, or even professional experiences that you've had, volunteer experiences that you've had. Ideally, it's going to be a combination of all of those things, or at least two of those things. So that way you have really a multifaceted perspective on your issue. And, you know, some ways to get there is just a lot of reflection, you know, sitting down, reviewing, you know, what are the things that you've done over the course of, the past few years. So looking at your resume, seeing what's on your resume. If you've already created a LinkedIn profile, seeing what you have listed on your LinkedIn profile, thinking about all the work that you have done. And maybe your issue isn't exactly some of those things, right? Like you may not exactly have been doing, volunteer work with organizations that are lobbying for better practices and better policy for Indigenous populations here in the US. That's fine. Like that's not something that's going to necessarily be everyone's cup of tea or everyone's experiences. However, what are some ways that your academic training, those professional experiences and pursuits, those extracurricular and co-curricular activities are maybe even adjacent to the issues that are part of the foundation's mission. And then from there, thinking about what your career focus is as well. So what do you hope to be doing in your career, and how does that relate to the mission of the organization? The key things being that your issue is significant and urgent, so that this is something that is currently significant, a current issue that is significant to the organization, that is an urgent need, that is something that is currently affecting people here in the US, and that is currently affecting the populations that the foundation is focusing on. It's also something that you have the potential to be a leader for in the future. So again, this is where your experience, your expertise, your perspective is coming into play. When making your case for this issue, again, you need to make sure that you are being clear about why this is a significant issue, why this is an urgent issue, why this needs to be addressed now, and how your particular perspectives are going to be relevant for you in order to get this fellowship. Things to avoid when writing about your issue: talking about yourself as a sole practitioner. So acting as if you are the key to solving this issue. Any issue that you approach is going to be multifaceted, is going to be just very, very large scale, right? It is going to be something that one person will not be able to fix on their own, or else you wouldn't be writing about it. However, so making sure that you are not acting as if you are the key to solving this, more focusing on what are some thoughts you have, what are some ideas that you have, what are some perspectives that you have that might be helpful or influential or impactful on this issue. Avoiding the language of solutions. So saying that this idea that you are presenting is the key to solving this issue, and no other ideas are going to solve this issue except the one that you are presenting. Climate change is a beast of a problem that we have not been able to solve globally yet, and we know is going to have multiple solutions, right? And so focusing on this as like there's one solution to this one global problem is not going to really get you anywhere. So avoiding the language of solutions and more providing like these are some ideas to get us propelling forward in a good direction for this issue or this particular area of this issue. Instead, underestimating the issue. You do not want to ever underestimate the issue or underestimate the importance of the issue that you've selected in your essay. Again, why are you choosing this issue if it is something that is not, that you don't think is important? You want to make sure that you are selecting and talking about an issue that is important to you, that you know is important overall to, again, the US as a country, because this particular fellowship is focused here domestically. However, also many of these issues are going to have global effects as well. So always avoid underestimating the issue that you've selected. And finally, choosing an issue that's too broad, right? So this particular fellowship, one of the facets of it is, they're looking for individuals who have an interest in environmentalism, right? So many folks might be thinking about climate change as an issue. Climate change itself, way too broad. Climate change is again, a global issue that has multiple causes, multiple impacts, multiple effects worldwide, multiple even itself being an understatement. And so just to say climate change is your issue is far, far too broad of an issue to choose to address. So you really want to make your issue a lot more specific. So taking a particular area of climate change or a particular area of environmentalism and really breaking it down to something that is way, way more specific. So that way you are thinking about it from a perspective that is much more manageable in providing potential approaches. Excuse me. So, so next steps in terms of the trajectory. The three things you want to be thinking about are, what have you done about it? What will you do about it? And how will this fellowship assist you in doing that in the future? So one, what have you done about it? What are the things that you have done over the course of the last few years that have provided you a base of knowledge, a base of experience, a base of expertise that will help to propel you forward and have put you in a position where you can continue, or where you can think about and talk about these issues and also can learn more. What will you do about it? So what now you have, right? You've gotten to this point in your life, you have this base of knowledge, you've had these experiences that have provided you both an academic interest and academic knowledge or knowledge base, as well as some practical experiences in this area. How are you going to take all those experiences and how will those experiences help to propel you forward? What are some things that you plan to do in the future to address this particular issue that you're writing about? And then how will this fellowship help you do it? So again, if we're thinking about climate change too broad, narrowing it down, maybe narrowing down climate change to the impacts of wildfires on rural communities in Northern California. And how are you, maybe you've done a lot of work with resettlement for families or individuals who've been displaced by wildfires, and what is the work how are you going to take that work and how is that going to propel you forward? How will this fellowship help you to do that work you want to do in the future? So how will this fellowship assist you in doing that? How will it help you to get a degree, to continue your own career path? What is that career path that you want to be taking to continue to address this issue in the future? And what does this mean? What does this fellowship mean for you to accomplish those goals? So defining that vision, right? So we've got your past, we've got your present, looking at the future. So providing specificity and clarity. So being specific about those future goals that you have and providing clarity on why that is important to the selection committee and to you, and so why you should be getting this fellowship. Considering ways forward, when it comes to the particular issue that you're addressing, what are some models that have been used in the past? How can you maybe take some of those models or that have been used in other places and adjust them for the particular area or issue that you are talking about in your application. Looking at trends and innovations in your field. So thinking about the challenges that that your field faces, some of the, again, looking at the past models or past ways that things have been done and what's worked, what hasn't, and how can you take that learning that other people have done and that you have since learned secondhand and change things? How can you flip the issue on its head or flip some of those ideas on their head or take some of those trends and innovations and like run even further with them? You always want to anticipate what some of those challenges that you will eventually face are. However, recognize in your application that your ideas, obviously there's always flaws, right? Like, what are some challenges that you could potentially be facing? What are some of the potential roadblocks? This helps you demonstrate that you understand that this is a very complex issue. And so demonstrating to a committee that you understand all of the intricacies, all of the nuances of your particular issue are going to be vital to really getting or to a strong application. So, and then thinking about the fit overall. So when we're thinking about fit, we're thinking about, this comes for this particular fellowship or any fellowship that you're thinking about. How are your academic experiences, your professional experiences, your extracurricular and co-curricular activities and experiences, and your future goals all fitting together to, one, help you write a strong application, as well as how do all of these experiences fit the fellowship criteria that you're applying for. So when you're looking at fellowships, making sure that all of your experiences fit the criteria of the fellowship that you're applying for. Because if you're not fitting the criteria, it's going to be an even harder job for you to try to get this fellowship. Is it impossible? No, it's not impossible, but you want to make sure that you're setting yourself up for success when identifying fellowships to apply for. As well, and also thinking about this from the recommender angle, who are the recommenders, who are the individuals in your life who can speak to all of these pieces, can validate that work that you have done, and make the connections from your experiences to the work that is being done by this foundation, by alumni of or past recipients of the fellowship that you're applying for. So we've got a couple of examples of past responses to some of the questions for this fellowship application. Excuse me. So one of the things that this fellowship application asks is, like, what are your career goals? And this is a pretty common application question for almost any fellowship, because they're giving you funding to either for your grad work or to help fund your current education. And so they want to know how this money is going to help you meet your career goals later on. And so, for this particular question, it's in 1 or 2 sentences, describe your career goal. It's very broad, it's very open. And so this particular individual or this applicant said, my career objective is to direct regional environmental sustainability projects in Latin America for an international nonprofit. I hope to lead sustainable land use initiatives through engaging local partners, communities, and governments to scale up the impact of ecosystem conservation. And then there's a second question, whether about their professional aspirations. What issues, needs, or problems do you hope to address? Indicate in which areas of the environment or tribal public policy or Native American healthcare you are considering making your career, and specify how your academic program and your overall education plans will assist you in achieving your goals. And so they responded, during my career, I hope to protect and conserve natural land by collaborating with local communities and governments to pursue alternatives to deforestation and implement ecological agriculture initiatives to reintroduce native crops in farming communities. A report from the nonprofit organization Carbon Fund states that 11 to 14% of global warming is linked to deforestation, making the conservation of forests and other ecosystems a critical area in the fight against climate change. I intend to carry out ecosystem conservation projects as a regional manager with an international organization such as the Nature Conservancy. Sustainable development requires not only a strong foundation in environmental science and economics, but also communication skills and cultural knowledge. My culture and politics major has allowed me to gain advanced Spanish and Portuguese language skills, pursue a regional focus on Latin America, and explore the intersections between the environment and global development. After graduating, I hope to gain expertise in sustainable development through an international volunteer program such as the Peace Corps Environment or Agriculture area. I'll then pursue a master's program designed to provide both rigorous training in environmental science and theoretical and economic frameworks for implementing sustainability projects. I am interested in the University of Pennsylvania's Master of Environmental Studies with a focus on environmental sustainability due to the program's interdisciplinary focus on environmental science and business, and the international network of sustainability programs with which students can intern or volunteer. So we can see that, they've used the first question to essentially provide a very succinct overview of what they then go far more in depth in the second question. So they almost use this question as like an abstract or summary of like what they go into more detail on later. So they know here they plan to direct regional environmental sustainability projects in Latin America for an international nonprofit. They then go into further detail about that in the first paragraph here, and what specific things that they are hoping to work on as part of that work in a nonprofit setting. They also talk about talking about on a broad level, the work that they hope to do, and then doing a deeper dive in this first paragraph on their overall, in terms of the career trajectory piece, and then making the connections between their career trajectory and their current work as a Georgetown student, and then what they plan to do moving forward in order to set them up to meet this goal. I think there are a couple of things that they could have tightened up a little bit. So they could have gone a little bit more in depth in the last paragraph about maybe the specific things, of going a little bit more specific about the way that the Penn program offers that interdisciplinary focus. So what are the overlaps of environmental science and business that they hope to learn, and why this particular program with that overlap and with that interdisciplinary focus will help them. So that's one thing that they could have expanded a little bit more on. But overall, succinct, to the point, they are sharing their overall goals, how their current work has set them up to meet those goals, and how they hope to continue their education and continue their volunteer experiences to set them up to accomplish this goal. So that is the end of our presentation today. You can find some more information about reaching out to recommenders on our volunteer, or our fellowship applicant toolkit, which is on our website, crf.georgetown.edu. If you have any questions, you can email us at fellowships@georgetown.edu. You can also email us to get added to our listserv. For those of you who are watching this recording, thank you so much for joining us today. and have a good rest of your day.